Hello, I'm Julie. Thank you for joining me for this VR to the tag Self-Care Bundle. And this is from Natalia over at the Tarot Shrink. Of course, I will leave a link to her original video. But this is a topic that is at the forefront of my life, my mind, especially the last few months. I have been really making effort. I've been making effort to exercise self-care and to not lose sight of it. And so Natalia's video definitely resonated, and it was also food for thought in terms of, verbalizing my idea of self-care and also what my self-care bundle is, which I've been using and hence learning more and more about in the last few months, especially. For me, when I'm maintaining self-care, I am feeling 10 of Cups, and not in like a blissed out joy kind of way, but just contentment. Contentment, a sense of equilibrium and balance, both physically and mentally. And so, of course, a lot of that for me lends to, sure, like daily habits, physical activity, moving my body, nutrition. So, of course, when those aspects fall to the wayside, then I know that I am not engaging properly in self-care. And then, of course, the mental aspect for me, a huge part, one of the most prominent parts of my mental self-care is creative play. And that just, I describe that as making things, just having fun, making things, expressing myself creatively, engaging that creative muscle. And it's just been something that has been innate in me from the time I was a young kid. I always loved to be creative and express myself through some kind of creative medium or form and just have fun. And so examples of creative play for me, I count tarot as an example of creative play. It's not the only thing tarot is, but certainly that is a part of it. Making YouTube videos, this channel, it's a form of creative play. Journaling, my dolls, I have a doll collection, so doing things with those, coloring, even something like language lessons, which of course it's educational, and I still consider that a form of creative play because it's fun. So creative play, which is a term that's been around for a while, it's not only something that is just natural for me to want to engage in. So it's just kind of a part of my life. It's not only a part of my life, but simultaneously a tool for self-care. And so when I find myself not feeling inspired to engage in creative play, that is a huge red flag that I need to give attention to my self-care. Now, sure, there are going to be phases where I don't feel like doing anything but like binge watching a show, and that's all well and good, but I'm talking about extended periods of time that result in losing that balance, right? Losing that kind of equilibrium, then that is red flag, and I know that there's something I need to investigate there. So what I'm going to show you as part of my kind of current self-care bundle are not strictly tools that are delegated only to self-care. So I use these books and decks in any number of other contexts and situations. So I use these decks when I do have that maintenance of self-care. And I find that these tools are especially helpful for when I am needing to readjust and to regain that feeling of balance. And depending on my needs and my mood, this self-care kit is going to look different. It's going to be ever evolving. Let's start off with some books. Now, right now, my self-care bundle has not consisted of like long fiction literature or books that require me to focus, because focus has been quite a challenge for me in the last few months. So which is not to say I'm not still actively trying to read books like that, but I wouldn't call that my current self-care bundle. Now, in the past, books like that would have been. I would say for the longest time, I would rely on reading, and particularly reading fiction, because that's my go-to genre category, as being a form of self-care and a form of inspiring creative play. But not recently. So I just did a VR to a tag called Picture Book Decks, where I talk about some of the picture books that I own because I do collect them. And I find them to be a lovely form of self-care, because not only do they take very little time and focus, but the stories are touching and the illustrations are beautiful and serve, again, as just kind of a potential source of inspiration for me to get that spark back, to engage in some type of creativity or creative play. But just in general, picture books are like a salve for me, and they're just a go-to that I fall back on. So I only have just a few to quickly show. Two of them in particular I reread because the subject matter of the two, they deal with grief, which is, what I'm having to navigate and what I'm using my self-care bundle for. So this first book is The Heart in the Bottle by Oliver Jeffers. And it's about this girl who loses her grandfather, and decides that the pain is just too much, and so she decides to put her heart in a bottle to protect herself. And she goes on for years and years with her heart in the bottle. And then we have this one, Cry Heart But Never Break. I cannot pronounce that name, but here's the author and the illustrator. So again, another book about death and grieving. And again, the illustrations are they're great. And it's another story that just, tugs on the heartstrings. It's touching. I showed this in the Picture Book Decks video, so I won't spend too much time, but this has been so much fun to reread. And this falls in line with one of the decks that I'm about to show you too. But this is a book called The Wonderful World of Eva, and it's about the author and her adventures with these weird magical species. So she documents all of them and talks about her personal experiences throughout her girlhood with all of these fascinating creatures. Moving out of the picture book category, this next book is one that I have reread numerous times, and I am not a rereader. I don't reread books usually. This is an exception. It is called Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert, and it's what the cover says. This is a book about living creatively beyond fear. So engaging in a creative life, and even just being curious about the world and sustaining that curiosity and having that lead to creativity and being creative. So this was a game changer for me. And it changed my life in some ways, not to sound super like melodramatic, but this was a huge reason that I even started this YouTube channel. I had wanted to start a channel like for the longest time, but I was too afraid. I was too afraid. But then after reading this book, I decided to address my fear and go for it. So I highly recommend this book, both audio and print format. Great. Coloring books are another tool in my self-care bundle, and I pulled out just a few. I am not one of those colorists who loves super detailed coloring books. Like for instance, Joanna Brassford, her coloring books are just so detailed, and I feel like she was one of the coloring book creators to really popularize and grow the community of adult colorists. Her books fucking stressed me out. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. I quickly learned that I need simple coloring books. I just want to color, but I don't want to be coloring for like months on end, to finish a page. So I really like more simplified illustrations that I can color, whimsical topics, subjects. Like this one is fairies, mermaids, witches, and more. I am not trying to become a huge expert with, shading and blending and all those things, at least not at this point. It's just about having fun and just engaging in coloring and not having it take oodles and oodles of time. Like, see, very simple. And I really actually hate coloring background. I hate it. What I've begun to do in the last few years is I will take a coloring page and actually shrink it down on my printer, shrink down the scale and print it out on, paper stock that is good for coloring. And then after I'm done, I'll paste that in my journal. So here's another one, Enchanted Halloween. Yeah, this one's a fun one. This one, it's a little more detailed than some of my other ones, but it's okay because the figures are so big, right? So we're not talking about coloring in like 5 gazillion leaves in a forest or something like that. It's these didn't take me that long at all. Super simple to do, or simple enough. And then finally, this book I just got out again because I want to pick back up with it, and it is the Tarot coloring book. And yeah, this has my name written all over it. Not only a coloring book, but on the subject of tarot. Another thing about coloring is that I don't want to spend too much time thinking about my color choices. And I would say I'm not really the greatest at color combinations, which is why I love coloring books that are like color by number. And with this one, because I know what the RWS deck looks like, I can use that as my template for coloring these pages. So that's less mental energy I have to expend, and I can just focus on the fun of coloring. So I don't think I made it very far at all with these. This I think this was the last one that I ended up doing. So yeah, it looks like I'm going in order. And it'll be a hot minute before I finish this whole thing, and that is fine, but that's a fun one. Now on to decks. I have a total of 7 that I have either used recently or am using currently. 4 tarot, 3 oracle. So let's start off with tarot. In terms of tarot choices for a self-care kit, I have found that I lean a lot on animal decks, actually, like this one. the Grimalkin's Curious Cats Tarot. This is just one of several animal decks that I have used recently. And the animal decks that I own are sweet, they are non-confrontational, and so they offer messages without any kind of acidic attitude, any kind of bite. I mean, certainly they can maybe be cheeky at times, but when it comes to a self-care bundle, they know better than to treat me like that, you know? So this is a great deck that I really enjoyed and got a lot out of recently. And cats have a special place in my heart, and I do have a few cat decks. Next one is the Sasaribito Tarot. And I think I discussed this in previous 3 girls, that this deck was kind of a surprise self-care deck for me. I wasn't intending for it to play that role, and turns out that it is a deck that really gives me a feeling of inner strength, inner fortitude. And because I would say this art, like I like the art, it's not necessarily an art style that I immediately gravitate toward. I'm not put off by it by any means, but I've come to really love the art and appreciate it. And I especially love Stasia Burrington's representation of the RWS, you know, from her perspective. And like this one is one of my favorites. So this has been a very valuable deck in my self-care bundle that I wouldn't have necessarily predicted it would be. But it's a good one. While hug decks and comfort decks are certainly a staple, understandably so, in a self-care bundle, these next 2 decks I'm going to show aren't what I would categorize as hug decks. I would call them rage decks. I mean, and I didn't make up that term. I've heard it floating around. I don't. The way I define a rage deck is a deck that reflects my anger, my feelings of anger, spiciness back at me, and in a way that makes me feel seen, in a way that makes me feel validated. These are decks that hold space for anger or rage, which is, to me, that's an important part of self-care, to honor feelings of anger that we might have and that we have to navigate. Is that a space you want to linger in for too long? No, of course not. And there is merit to acknowledging those feelings. And these are decks that meet me where I am in terms of those feelings. So one is the Murder of Crows Tarot. This is the mass market version that I have modified, just FYI. This is for sure a rage deck that I have leaned on when I want to wallow. You know, when I want a deck that understands my mindscape at the time. I see myself as several of these characters. You know, wearing these plague doctor masks as a form of self-protection, and they're trying to wade their way through this like clusterfuck of a landscape. And that is sometimes how I feel, and that's how I feel. I'm kind of trying to come to terms with feelings of anger and rage. And so this is a deck that certainly validates me, and again just meets me where I am and holds space for those feelings. Again, do I use this solely as a rage deck? No, no. But it's a good one for that particular purpose, I will say. And then the other rage deck that I've been using is the Vampires Tarot of the Eternal Night. I think this is out of print. And this is a deck that, well, first of all, it's hilarious, okay? So I love that. I love that it mixes a sense of humor in with the feistiness and the ragey elements. But what speaks to me about this deck is that so many of these characters are not only, they like look ragey or spicy or pissy or some form of maniacal, ready to just go off. And I'm all about it. I am all about it. So this has been not only fun, but once again, validating, and a deck that tells me, yeah, it's all right. You're pissed off. It's okay. I understand. And I'm here to hold your hand through that. I mean, oh my God, it's so funny. This deck is so funny too. Do any of you have rage decks, or decks that you use when you're feeling a little bit pissy or spicy, and you want a deck that leans into that mood? Please do like make a video or list some of your rage decks in the comments below. I would love to find maybe a couple more rage decks to put in my little self-care arsenal. Uh, I I'm surprised there aren't videos on this topic. If there, I don't think I've seen a tag or anything like that. If there isn't a tag, I'll make one so that you can hopefully make a video and show me your rage decks. All right, on to the Oracle decks. This one Natalia showed in her video and wholeheartedly agree. This is one that I have out on my reading table right now, Wisdom of the Wild Things Oracle. I actually did show this in my picture book decks video because this is by the same artist of the book that I showed you, The Wonderful World of Eva. And yeah, this deck has been great. I think that the key phrases are a nice mix. They're not overly saccharine. They aren't necessarily these kind of empty platitudes. And then at the same time, not also super in your face confronting. I just really, yeah, I really enjoyed this deck a lot. And of course I enjoyed the artistry. The illustrations are fantastic. The one card that I pulled just a few days ago that I continue to have sitting out on my reading table is this one, Alchemize Pain. And this was an impactful message in that I feel like I've been getting a few messages lately that all come back to the same idea of regaining inspiration, regaining the momentum to engage in creative play, which is so, so important to me. So the message for this card is all about releasing the pain through the vehicle of creativity and alchemizing that pain and hurt into art. So there's just kind of a bit on the nose, but like in the best way. So it's a great card. And just again, in general, a great deck. I love the gloss on this. I know people hate gloss, have been hating on gloss for some years now. I love me this gloss. Next up, we have a deck that I created, which is called the Cup of Contemplation Cards. And this is a deck that I made for prompting tarot readings or prompting any type of journal free write. So those are the two ways in which I have used this deck. So I'm not pulling a card every day. I think my pattern has been once a week. So I just pulled this out a couple weeks ago. And I've had those on my reading table as well. The first one that I pulled was, what if I didn't self-sabotage? And I know exactly what this is speaking to. This is speaking to my physical self-care. So yeah, I'm picking up what you're putting down, and fuck you. And then this one is what I pulled for this week. How can I be more open to receive inspiration? So again, it's just like so on point with some of these other card pulls that I've drawn. So I wouldn't call this one an oracle deck per se, but it's definitely been a valuable part of my self-care bundle. This final example that I'm going to show is the Morning Calm Oracle. And this is a deck that I've had for some time now. The key phrases just lend very nicely to more of a calming, supportive deck. And, you know, it reflects my culture, my Korean heritage, which that in itself provides a level of comfort and support. So this is another one that I actually didn't pull out very much last year, but this has certainly made an appearance this year. Yeah, the illustrations are beautiful. I love this. I think it's watercolor, I think. So that is it. I would love to hear more about your self-care bundle. So please do drop a comment below or make a video response on your social media platform of choice. And until the next time, much love and take care.